What's up, everyone? It's Scott Winarth here for another edition of Creator Life Live. It is Thursday, March 4th, 2021. And I thought tonight it would be great to have share a conversation that I had with Rachel Noall. She is the founder and creator behind a website called From Whispers to Roars. Also, she is she's a marketer, a creator, idea person, and I just loved her personality. We met through some online networking, and I thought it'd be great to kind of share that story here on Creator Life because she's doing it. She's got everything. She's doing it. She's publishing. She's making some money doing it and having a great time. She shared some specific ideas with me that I thought would be interesting to share with the Content Academy community. And this interview has never been seen before. We recorded it a day or so ago, but it is recorded, and I'm going to share it with you right now here on Creator Life. So stay tuned. Here comes Rachel Noall. Please feel free to leave some comments, and I'll be happy to respond. Also, Rachel will respond as soon as she sees them. And finally, before we get too far, depending on what platform you're watching this on, if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this video for future updates. If you're on Facebook, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We're multi-platform tonight, multi-streaming, so things may break, but that's okay. That's what being a content creator is. We're testing things out, trying it out, making sure the world can see our content. And enough of me. Let's get right into Rachel. She's a blast. You'll love this. I know you're going to love it. Watch this. Maybe grab a pen and pencil to take some notes, or a pen and a piece of paper, and be ready to be impressed. All right, let's bring on Rachel right now. Hello, and welcome to the Blog You Want in the Time You Have, or should I say Content You Want in the Time You Have podcast. It's Scott Winarth here, and I'm here with a special guest, Rachel Noall. Rachel heralds out of Denver, Colorado, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she does literary content. She is the creative strength behind From the Whispers to Roars literary magazine, and is a wealth of knowledge for creating content, and has some creative and innovative ideas for publishing and monetizing. So I thought it'd be really cool to kind of pick Rachel's brain to see what she's doing and kind of get a little backstory on how, she's kind of taking what normally would be something that people expect for free and turning into something that people are willing to pay for, right? So Rachel, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. So.
Yeah, excellent. So I know when we talked the other day, we seemed like we were on the same wavelength, maybe in different spaces, but definitely on the same wavelength, which I thought was great. But before we get too deep into it, I'm looking at your site. Please explain to me what a Denver typewriter poet is. I'm looking at that.
Okay. So businesses hire me to come hang out at their locations, whether it's for, a wedding, a office party, or kind of an event where they're trying to, get more people through the door. And people come up to my table. I have a 1964 Smith Corona typewriter, and they come to the table. They always ask me about the typewriter. They give me a topic, and then I write them a poem in under 2 minutes, and they get to take it home with them.
How cool is that? How cool is that? That's that's a really innovative thing. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite parts of being a poet. Honestly, it's great. I love it.
Okay, so you're originally from Cleveland, but you're not in Cleveland anymore, right? You're in Denver.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you've got from kind of where you were to launching Whispers to Roars.
Yeah, I was going through this. It was sort of an existential crisis, honestly, to put it lightly. I was teaching full time, and as much as I love teaching, and I now teach at the college level as an adjunct, but I was teaching full time, and I had all these creative ideas and all these things that I wanted to do, and I had no time for it. And honestly, I was exhausted. Like anyone out there, teaching full time, or at home now with their children teaching because of COVID, you know how tired and how draining it is. So I was like, okay, I need to rethink this. Like, I cannot do this for 40 years. I was like, all right, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to do this. So I quit my job, and my parents were like, oh my God, you just moved to one of the most expensive cities in the country. Like, how the heck are you going to do this? And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a writer. So I had this writing background as an English major. Everyone says English majors are a waste. They are not. We can talk about that more. But I said, okay, how do I be creative, but also make money doing this? And I was like, oh, I'm going to become a content writer. Like, that's great. I'm a good writer. Like, awesome. So I did that, and I launched a freelance business in content marketing. And now 5 years kind of down the line, I work for a marketing company. I run my own marketing company for small businesses. and I'm a poet. So I've published 3 books. I'm aggressively working on my 4th, and life is good. But in the midst there, when I was in this content writing space, it takes like 6 months to start a freelance business, just because you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And again, went to a liberal arts college, and as much as I loved it, didn't really teach me about how to start a business. So I was sitting there one day and I was like, all right, I feel like I'm doing this poetry thing and I feel pretty isolated, right? People don't really talk about their struggle. They're just like, do it online, and you see like the beautiful end result and you don't see what went into it. And I was like, okay, how do I like create a community around this? Like, how do I get more connected with people? How do I go from the writing side to the editing side? What does that look like? I quite literally took a nap and I woke up and I was like, I'm going to start a literary magazine and this is what I'm going to call it. And 2 weeks later, I started it and I launched like that small business. And now we are about 3 years old and we've published, that means 9 issues. We've published some in print, some digitally. We have 100,000 people a month coming to our website. It's crazy, but it was this side project that people thought was nuts of me to pursue whatsoever for a hobby. And now it's something, it doesn't pay all my bills, but like, it's pretty cool that I can do it and support other creative people and also like have a little side gig, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love it. And I don't want to overemphasize the monetization of it, because I think what you're doing is beautiful, first of all. And I think it gives people a platform. But, I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, and I think that it's interesting to kind of talk about that aspect of sort of getting people to pay for something online, especially something that like is typically always, you're welcome to call me out on this, but it's like traditionally some of the stuff has been free because the internet is a great way to publish content. So therefore people just publish it to the web.
Oh yeah.
But, so I think the idea, I guess what I'm trying to get at is you have an audience and therefore you're sort of monetizing the audience with your content. Any struggles with that? I know we kind of talked about that. Could you share a little bit about how you feel about monetizing and you don't have to get into the details of monetizing, but just an overall, like what are you giving in exchange for money, I guess is the question I'm having.
Yeah. And I think too, this is one of the things. So when I started this, I was not yet in school for creative writing. I went back and got my master's in creative writing and poetry specifically. And a big part of that program, yes, there's a lot of writing, but there's also a lot of learning about the publishing industry. And for so many people out there getting traditionally published, yeah, it's great. It's awesome. There are people out there that do it. It's not the reality for the majority of people who are writing online. And it can be great writing. And if their writing just like doesn't fit the market, they're never going to have a shot. And that sucks. But it is because we have built this big kind of like barrier to entry, right? As far as what traditional publishing looks like and who does not have access to it. So the struggle was with From Whispers to Roars was like, okay, I have this website that I'm paying for. Our first issue before I was charging submission fees, we received 500
Wow.
things to review. And I'm going, oh man, like that's great. But then, I'm going through them and I'm compiling this thing and I'm like, I'm sinking 50 hours into this. Like, how can I keep this up and, be sustainable and still provide a great service to people? So the answer to that was adding a small submission fee. And that ranges between, like $2 and $5, depending on the type of issue we're doing, depending on, whether we're printing it or not, depending on, are we doing contest prizes at the end, for like best of. But, there is a learning curve as far as, and we still get pushback occasionally. Someone will say like, why would I pay you to read my work? And I'm like, yeah, like that's a valid question. Let me tell you why. It's because you have someone who is trained to look at your work professionally, right? Like I'm not just some like person in a basement that started to start a literary magazine. I think I'm pretty good at this, right? So you're paying for that. And if you're published, you are paying for your work to be in front of 100,000 people. And they go, what do you mean? Like, how do you know that? And I go, well, I do work in marketing and there's this beautiful thing called Google Analytics. And here's a screenshot and I'll send it to them. I do it all the time because people get real up on their high horse about it. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, like if you're like selected, your work is published, your work is going to be in front of 136,000 people this month. And that's how many people were at our website last month. And they go, oh, okay. All right. I can pay $2 for that. And I'm like, if you, and again, if you want to be a writer, a creative out there, that $2 is not that big of an investment, but it does take some trust. We try to be as transparent as possible and accessible. And, we often, donate portions of proceeds to nonprofits, specifically environmental. I think Colorado is a place where that's really important. And we're born in Denver. So, we try to give back. And again, this is not like a major moneymaker. No, this is not my full-time job here.
Yeah, but it's sustainable. Yeah, and that's good.
It's sustainable now. It pays for the website. It pays for, we use a great tool called Submittable so that people can submit their work. We read all of it blindly. Like they provide us with that software. So we're paying for things like that. And, then we pay for contest, prizes and all that jazz. But yeah, it definitely takes some education and sometimes some pushback being like, hey, I get it. I'm a writer too. Like I pay to submit my work to places, some really reputable places, right? Like we're all in this together and you got to give to get, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how people squawk over a couple dollars, but the truth is that I see both sides. It's also more like you don't want your information stolen more than anything over $2. But exactly. But the truth is like it's hard, and I think you're doing a great job with the idea of that you're building a community. I love the fact that it seems like you had such great success for getting. I mean, I would say getting 500 submissions your first couple go rounds is a huge success, right?
Yeah, it's mind blowing.
And that it's probably because you really hit a niche audience, right? Kind of you kind of knew who you were going after and you went after that, which I think is a good point for the creator community. Like you have to really kind of know who you're going for, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I was talking about this. I hosted a clubhouse yesterday with a friend of mine. And we were talking about creativity in business. So, turning a creative hobby into a business, like creative operation standpoints, and then like creative marketing and how do we approach this? And I think it's so important. Something we talked about was really identifying your audience. And when I started from Whispers to Roars, it was like, I'm going after indie poets. Like I'm going after people who have never been published. I'm trying to create a community for these people. I'm trying to give them a platform and a voice in a world where, poetry publishers are few and far between, photography and art publishers, few and far between, unless you've had like 10 residencies and, you have a doctorate and, all the things. So I think I did a good job initially of marketing to that group of people. And we have people who every time we open submissions, they're submitting to our magazine. And they've submit since the beginning, which I think is so cool. Like the life cycle of what that looks like is pretty awesome. And I'm glad that we've built that kind of trust.
That's great. So I want to switch gears a little bit. And I know, me, I'm a big productivity nerd. I love talking about productivity and especially when it comes to creating content. And you run the gamut kind of like me. You've got your side hustle, you've got your clients, you've got your work, you've got this, you've got that. So you're a busy person, and I get that. Let's talk a little bit how you manage that, if you don't mind. I think so you've got your site, you've got your website here. I call it a side hustle. I don't mean that in all.
Oh no.
That's like I mean that in as a positive way. So
when you say side hustle, I'm like, which one is he talking about? I quite literally have like 5.
So I have sometimes I joke. I say this is my side hustle to my side hustle kind of thing. So I get it. But so from Whispers to Roars, that's kind of the one I'm looking at right now at your website here. How do you like manage that when you've got other stuff going on? Because obviously, if you don't do it, it's not going to happen, I would assume, right? So do you spend a little bit of time every day? Like, how do you work that into your life?
Yeah. So with the magazine, I try really hard to adhere to that three issues a year. So we try to be a tri-annual magazine, and that gives me some airtime to breathe. So actually, we just opened submissions yesterday for our first issue of 2021. They'll be open for 2 weeks. So now I'm just kind of, I'm on the back end. I'll be checking my, the emails for that, every other day. Questions come up when people are submitting their work. right? It's a pretty vulnerable thing that people are doing, right?
Right.
So sometimes they have questions for me. Sometimes they have questions about the submission fees. Sometimes they have questions about, you know, the timeline of this. So I try my best, depending on the schedule, to once submissions start rolling in, I'll check the status of them in a minute. Let us know where we are on day one. We're usually about like 15 by now, which is pretty exciting. But I try to be pretty active, and I try to stay on top of reviewing them in real time. So once I come in, I start reviewing, just so at the end of the process, I don't have 200 that I have to go through. So I think a part of it is, you know, allotting 30 minutes a day, which, you know, I can sit here, drink my coffee. I'm in a sunny room, you know, it's pleasant. It's great for me because, again, I'm on the writer side of this, and I'm also get to be on this editor side. So it's how often do I get to sit down in my day to day and like read creative work, right? That's cool. So when submissions are open, I start reviewing them. Inevitably, at the end, we get about 100 in the last 2 days. So then I usually have about 2 weeks to start. I start combing through those over 2 weeks. And then the big thing, you know, I notify everyone all at one time. Hey, it's our pleasure to publish this. Hey, thank you for sending us this, but, you know, we're moving in a different direction. So, you know, then there's some correspondence that goes into that.
So how many end up in the actual magazine? Did you say that? I'm sorry.
Our acceptance rate varies, but I think it hovers around 5%.
Okay.
We receive a lot of submissions. We receive a lot. And, you know, some issues are bigger than others. The print ones, we tend to keep around 50 pages, whereas the ones on, you know, hosted on our website can be a little bit longer, which we try to, you know, accommodate. And then once all of the notices have been taken out, we take everything that's been accepted and I start compiling the order. I'm pretty anal about this just because I don't want like 2 images next to each other. Like I want it to flow nicely. Like if you've just read a 2,000 word piece of fiction, I want you to have a break and be able to read a poem of like a haiku, or I want you to have a break and be able to like look at a really cool piece of art. That's like the marketing person in me that's like, I need to chunk this out, right? That process usually goes relatively fast. I'd say 2 days. So turnaround for these, I try once submissions are closed at a month. Sometimes that doesn't happen for a variety of reasons, because life. But I always try to like, hey, I know we said we were going to publish this on this date. We're delayed 2 weeks. We're delayed 1 month. We're still on it. Don't worry. If you have any questions, let us know. And then when the issue goes live, we email everyone and say, hey, thank you again. You can check out the issue. If you have any questions, you know, reach out to us. Or if you see anything that you want changed, you know, reach out to us. But the life cycle of it. So now for the next like month and a half, I'll be probably on it every day. And then once that issue's out, I like to let it be out in the world and not have a distraction, not open submissions for a while. So I'll keep, you know, that up for like a month and we'll, you know, plug it via our email list, via social media. You know, sometimes we'll, you know, shout individual people out, you know, do the tagging and all that stuff. People love that. And then, you know, we'll open submissions again, probably in mid-June, July.
Cool. So tell me, you know, I lost my train of thought here in my own interview, but tell me, like, okay, I know I was going to ask, if you could do this full time, like if you could scale this up and do this full time, would it change? You know?
Like the management style of it? Or...
if you could think of anything that you would change, would you publish more often? Would you not publish as often? Would you try to expand it out into a larger market? Any ideas if you could go bigger with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this would become something that I would need to do every day. We try to be consistent with like that content creation, and I'm actually have a list of content that I'm writing today for the site. But that would become not less of a resource, because I think the blog has in many ways been a good resource and that has generated a lot of traffic as far as SEO goes. As a content writer who focuses on SEO, I would be going after those SEO keywords rather than trying to provide as many like tidbits, interviews. I would be targeting the keywords, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a marketing standpoint. So there would be an aggressive content SEO focused strategy there. And I think I would start investing in kind of traditional marketing as far
Interesting.
as, yeah, I'd probably take out some display ads on some of the kind of like poet resource websites. So there's like poets.org, Poets and Writers. Start going after that. And I think that's probably where I'd start. And then we'd see what worked and what didn't, like all marketing is. And then you revise and do it again. But yeah, it would definitely start with that SEO based content strategy, because right now that is how a lot of people land on our site.
That's actually what I was going to ask you next too.
Mm-hmm.
You're aside from your site, from Whispers to Roars and working with clients and stuff like that, I like to call this podcast the blog you want, because I'm a blogger by love and by nature. But I really feel that today this is really about the content you want, like kind of like what type of content today, because obviously we're creating video, we're creating audio, we're creating all written content. I mean, obviously the literary stuff is written, but I mean, how do you feel that? How do you think that's good or bad? Like, what type of content would you be creating today if you had unlimited opportunity?
It's funny too, because I was talking to a fellow poet. We connected through Instagram. I try really hard to be accessible on Instagram, and then I like make friendships with people that I probably might not never meet, but it's great to like pick their brain and have these conversations. But I was thinking, not from Whispers to Roars perspective, but from the like Noall perspective of like, how am I sharing my poetry? How am I interacting with people? And there would be more video, and that's coming in my fourth book. My fourth book comes with a playlist. I haven't told anyone this yet.
Okay.
Publicly. So my fourth book comes with a playlist. And I think a part of that is because I want people to start looking at poetry as not this like single thing. Like, I don't want people to go and buy my poetry book and have it be like this transactional relationship. And then they read it and then they put it on their shelf. Like, I want them to be able to interact with it in new ways. So I've been brainstorming, how am I going to market this? How do I extend it to different platforms? And yeah, that's something that's on my mind from Whispers to Roars as well. I mean, it extends when you think of content. And I think, and something I've thought about, I have not pulled the trigger on this yet because time and money, right? But I've thought about doing a podcast from Whispers to Roars and just interviewing different creatives kind of about their process. Because again, I think the fault of internet art and internet creativity is that we see the end result and not the process. And I think that talking about that process and normalizing it is really important. And again, I talked to this gentleman this week about poetry, and he's like, it seems like you like know what you're doing. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yes, I work in marketing, but like you don't know what's going on always with the algorithm. You don't know like what's working and what's not. And it's weird when you have a post and all of a sudden like 500 people are sliding into my DMs, and it's like, why that one? You don't always know. You're not an expert. So I think that being able to throw different things at the wall and see what sticks and what doesn't is a big part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I wrote down, and I think that some of my takeaways from this conversation is, one, really knowing your audience and going after an audience, and then also giving them what they want, right? People who are literary fiction, literary writers or poets, they want to be seen. They want to have their works, for the most part, they want someone to read what they're writing, right? To get to make it worth their time, I guess you could say. Not everyone is like that, but you're giving people what they want, and you're really building a community around liked interest, which is great, right?
Yeah.
Tell us again. Yeah, that's great. So, look, I think this has been a really enlightening conversation, even for the little time that we've talked. But give us a little idea how people can find you online and get in touch with you for your sites.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just redid my own website. It's rrnoall.com. Noall.com, Noall. You can always reach out to me through there. All my social links are on there. So I'm pretty active on Twitter, pretty active on Instagram, kind of the nature of the beast here, right? But then, if you're interested in submitting to the submissions for From Whispers to Roars, you can find us again, Instagram, Twitter, or through the website from whisperstoroars.com. All the information and links is on there. The explanation of why we charge submission fees is on there. There are also a lot of like blogs and resources that are on there, and be on the lookout for more because it is on my radar, and I am taking Fridays now to like work on a lot of creative projects. And I think there are big things coming. I would like to grow up more. It's something that's on my brain. And as far as that, I work in marketing. So if you ever want to talk about how to grow your small business, I work exclusively with small business owners and entrepreneurs and local SEO specifically, if that's something that you know about. And that business is called GMB Pirate. And I kind of work with anyone and everyone, but I work with small business owners because creative entrepreneurs are the best. And I love picking their brains, getting to know them, and supporting them. So if you ever have any of those needs, please reach out to me.
Wow. So you're not all niche to one area. You work with everyone, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. Well, Rachel, it's been awesome talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast with me and sharing some ideas on how to work with content and different types of content. I think for me, I'm so focused on business and listicles and like the type of how-to content. It's refreshing to see that people are creating content that's more works of art, in my opinion, versus just trying to market themselves and do this and that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's so much that can go into it. And I think we often forget that there is room for both in these creative spaces, and we don't have to segment it. And I think there are conversations out there happening, and it's so important that we're talking about this. So thank you.
Cool. Till next time. Bye now.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching that exclusive interview here on Creator Life. Rachel is a wealth of information. I'm sure you are as inspired as I am in terms of taking some of the takeaways that we talked about in this episode. 1, going after a niche audience. 2, knowing the right product. And 3, just keeping at it until you find the right tune. And then once you know where you want to go, doubling down and going further with it. So be sure to give this a thumbs up if you like this video. If you're on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the like button, the ring that bell to get updates. And just remember that every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time, it's Creator Life. We talk about what's going on in the creator community. We talk about how to be a creator, how to live a creator mindset, if you will, and tips and tactics you can use to take to the bank. Next week, I'm excited to bring back one of my favorite friends here in the city, Kelsey Hoff. Kelsey is a copywriter and content specialist, and Kelsey's got a great blog, a journaling to blog platform that she talked about during Creative Year Ever. But Kelsey and I are going to talk about some more blogging tips, and I'm looking forward to having her on next week at 8 p.m. It's going to be a live interview, so be prepared to ask Kelsey some questions, or me if you would like, and be sure to come back then on YouTube or Facebook, whichever platform you watch us on. And I'm going to sign off. Have a good night, everyone. And till next week, keep creating that content. Bye now.